I didn't plan to come home early. That part matters. My leave was approved last minute, squeezed in between training rotations and paperwork that never seemed to end. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my family, not even my husband. I wanted it to be a surprise. I imagined his face when he saw me standing in the doorway, maybe tired, maybe confused, then smiling like he always used to. I imagined the smell of our house, the familiar creak in the hallway floor, the way it would feel to finally sleep in my own bed after months of shared barracks and silence. I bought his favorite cake on the way home, chocolate with too much frosting. I picked up flowers without thinking, my hands acting on instinct instead of logic. I remember feeling proud that we had survived distance, proud that despite the deployments, the missed holidays, the long stretches of loneliness, we were still us. I used my spare key. The house was quiet, too quiet. As I walked down the hallway, I heard laughter, soft, breathy, unmistakably intimate. For half a second, my brain tried to protect me. I told myself he must be watching something on TV, maybe a video, maybe a call with friends. Then I heard a man's voice, not my husband's. My body reacted before my mind did. My heart slammed so hard against my ribs that I had to grip the wall to stay upright. My fingers went numb. The cake slipped from my hands, hit the floor with a dull sound I'll never forget. I pushed open the bedroom door, and everything I thought I knew about my life collapsed in a single frame. There was my husband, in our bed, with my closest friend, sheets tangled, skin exposed, shock frozen on their faces. The room smelled like betrayal. I didn't scream right away. I couldn't. My throat closed, my ears rang, and my brain fractured into pieces that didn't know how to reconnect. In that moment, I understood something terrifyingly clear. Whatever explanation came next wouldn't matter. Because some things, once seen, can never be unseen. And some surprises don't just change your day. They rewrite your entire life. If you'd asked anyone who knew us, they would have told you we were solid. Not flashy, not dramatic, just steady. I met my husband during our sophomore year of college. We were both taking the same history elective, one of those huge lecture halls where everyone pretends they're listening while scrolling on their phones. He sat 2 rows in front of me, always early, always taking handwritten notes, like the professor might suddenly quiz us on dates from the Middle Ages. The first time we talked was over a stupid question about an assignment neither of us understood. That turned into coffee. Coffee turned into long walks across campus at night, talking about everything and nothing. Our families, our fears, what we wanted to become when life finally started. He was calm where I was intense, grounded where I was restless. Being with him felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. We dated for 4 years before getting married. 4 years of inside jokes, shared playlists, late night takeout eaten straight from the container. 4 years of learning how the other person took their coffee, what made them shut down, what made them light up. When he proposed, it wasn't elaborate. No crowd, no cameras, just the 2 of us walking along the beach at sunset. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, the wind tugging at my hair. When he got down on one knee, my first reaction wasn't shock. It was certainty. Our wedding was small, but perfect. Family, friends, laughter, music that carried us into the night. I remember thinking, standing there in my dress, his hands warm around mine, that this was the safest place I'd ever been. After we married, real life arrived quickly. I joined the military not long after. It wasn't a spontaneous decision. We talked about it for months, what it would mean, how hard it would be, how we'd handle the distance. He said he was proud of me, said he could handle it, said we'd be fine. And for a while we were. We talked every day when I was away. Video calls stretched late into the night, time zones be damned. He'd tell me about his work, the little things that happened at home. I'd tell him about training, about how exhausted I was, about missing him in ways that surprised me. Whenever I came home on leave, he made it feel special. Sometimes it was just a quiet dinner at home. Other times, he planned short trips, little escapes to remind us we were still a couple, not just voices on a screen. I trusted him completely. And I trusted my friends too, especially the one who would later become the reason everything shattered. We'd known each other since high school. He'd been at our wedding. He'd stood beside my husband as best man, smiling proudly, promising loyalty and lifelong friendship. He was family. Looking back now, I replay memories like crime scene footage, group hangouts, shared jokes, the way they sometimes looked at each other when they thought no one noticed. But at the time I saw nothing. Because I wasn't looking for betrayal. I was building a future, planning kids someday, talking about names, imagining a life that balanced service, love, and home. I thought absence made the heart grow fonder. I didn't realize it could also create space. Space for lies to grow quietly. Space for boundaries to blur. Space for someone else to step into my place. While I was gone, believing in a marriage that only existed for me. The truth is, nothing exploded all at once. It never does. The cracks appeared quietly, like hairline fractures you don't notice until the structure is already compromised. During my last deployment, our calls started changing in subtle ways. Not enough to trigger alarm, just enough to make things feel slightly off. He was still kind, still affectionate, still said he missed me. But he was also distracted. Sometimes he'd answer calls later than usual. Sometimes he'd say he was tired and keep conversations short. I told myself it was normal. Life doesn't pause just because one person leaves. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife counting minutes and inventing problems where none existed. And then there were the group trips, camping weekends, barbecues, birthday gatherings. Whenever I was home, we spent time with the same tight-knit circle of friends, people I'd known for years, people who felt safe. I noticed how comfortable my husband was around them, how easy laughter came when we were all together. I noticed how my friend, that friend, was always around. Too available, too familiar. Still, I brushed it off. After all, they'd known each other almost as long as they'd known me. I trusted both of them. Trust was the foundation of everything I believed in. What unsettled me most, though, was how peaceful my husband seemed while I was gone. Not lonely, not restless, just fine. When I asked if he missed me, he said yes. When I asked if things were hard, he said he was managing. I took comfort in that, even though some part of me felt oddly replaceable. I told myself I was projecting. The military trains you to compartmentalize, to push feelings aside so you can function. I did that with ease. I pushed down doubts, told myself love wasn't fragile, told myself marriages survived worse. The real seed of conflict planted itself during that camping trip. At the time, I didn't consciously register it as a warning. Just a strange flicker of discomfort that passed too quickly to analyze. The way my friend stood a little too close to my husband. The way my husband didn't move away. The way they shared a look when they thought no one else was paying attention. I remember feeling something tighten in my chest for just a second. Then I laughed it off. You're tired, you're imagining things. The drive home from that trip was normal. Easy conversation. Plans for the next weekend. He talked about work. I talked about returning to base soon. Nothing felt wrong enough to confront. That's what makes betrayal so cruel. It hides inside normalcy. At night, lying next to him, I sometimes felt like there was an invisible barrier between us. Not distance exactly, more like a curtain he didn't realize I could sense. I blamed the separation, the deployments, the stress. I blamed myself. I told myself that if I were home more, if I weren't gone for months at a time, if I were easier, things would feel different. I had no idea that while I was busy protecting our future, someone else was quietly dismantling it. And the people I trusted most were already standing on the wrong side of the line. I still remember the exact second my hand touched the bedroom door. It was warm, sunlight spilling in through the window, dust floating lazily in the air. The kind of ordinary detail that shouldn't matter, but somehow does when your life fractures around it. I pushed the door open. For a split second, my brain refused to translate what my eyes were seeing. My husband was there, in our bed, with my closest friend. Not sitting, not talking, not even pretending to explain something. They were tangled together, sheets half pulled up, skin bare where it shouldn't have been. My husband's face drained of color. My friend froze like a child caught doing something unforgivable. Time slowed down in the most vicious way. I remember noticing stupid details. How crooked the pillow was, how the light hit the wall behind them, how my friend's shoes were still neatly lined up by the door. Like this was just another casual visit. The cake slipped from my fingers. It hit the floor and cracked open, frosting splattering across the tile. The flowers followed, landing softly, almost respectfully, as if they knew the moment deserved silence. No one spoke at first. My ears rang so loudly I thought I might pass out. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, my wrists, my knees. I couldn't breathe properly, every inhale shallow and sharp. Then my husband said my name. Just once. My friend didn't say anything. He couldn't even look at me. I felt something rise up in my chest, not screaming, not crying, something colder, heavier. What? I heard myself ask, my voice sounding distant and unfamiliar. Is this? My husband scrambled for words. Apologies tumbled out half-formed, overlapping, meaningless. My friend finally spoke too, stammering something about a mistake, about it not being what it looked like. I laughed. The sound shocked all three of us. "You're in my bed," I said calmly, "with my friend. Tell me how this isn't what it looks like." My hands were shaking so badly I had to curl them into fists. I could feel my nails digging into my palms, grounding me, anchoring me to reality. My husband tried to get up, tried to reach for me. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. That was the first time he really looked afraid. I don't remember everything I said after that. I know my voice rose. I know words like betrayal. How long, while I was gone, spilled out in fragments. I know my friend kept apologizing without ever actually explaining anything. The worst part wasn't even the answers. It was the way my husband couldn't meet my eyes. I realized then, before he confirmed it, that this wasn't new. That this wasn't a single lapse in judgment. This was something practiced, something hidden. I turned and walked out. I didn't grab a bag. I didn't slam the door. I just left, my legs carrying me forward while my mind lagged behind, still trying to catch up. I got in my car and drove. I don't remember where I went at first. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. I remember my chest aching like something had been physically ripped out of me. At some point, I pulled over and screamed. Not words, just sound. By the time I reached my mother's house, the shock had started to wear off, replaced by something heavier, grief layered with fury, layered with humiliation. I sat on her couch staring at nothing while she talked quietly, asking questions I couldn't answer yet. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Texts, calls, voicemails. I didn't respond to a single one. That night, lying awake in a childhood bed that suddenly felt impossibly small, the truth settled in fully for the first time. My marriage didn't end when I walked into that bedroom. It ended long before. I just happened to be the last person to know. The first thing that disappeared wasn't trust. It was time. Hours blurred together in my mother's house. The walls pressing in, like they were trying to contain something too large. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone, watching notifications pile up without opening a single one. I felt strangely calm. That scared me more than if I'd been hysterical. I replayed the scene again and again, different angles, different expressions, different endings, as if my brain believed it could find a version where this made sense, where I walked in and misunderstood, where I laughed it off later. But every replay ended the same way. My husband in our bed, with my friend. By the second day, the anger arrived. It was sharp, precise, and exhausting. I was furious at my husband for betraying me, furious at my friend for dismantling a decade of loyalty, furious at myself for trusting both of them so completely. I kept thinking about the months I'd spent away, the nights I'd ended calls early because I was exhausted, the weekends I'd missed, the holidays I'd spent in uniform instead of at home. Did I make this easier for them? The question lodged itself in my chest like a thorn. I hated that part of my brain, the one that tried to bargain, the one that searched for ways this could somehow be my fault. By the third day, the shock had given way to something heavier, clarity. I knew I couldn't just react emotionally. I'd been trained not to. When things go wrong, you assess, you gather information, you protect yourself. So I broke one of my own rules. While my husband was at work, I went back to the house. My hands were steady as I walked inside, like my body had already accepted what my heart hadn't. Everything looked exactly the same. Shoes by the door, photos on the wall, our life frozen mid-lie. His tablet was sitting on the coffee table, unlocked. I told myself I was just looking for answers. Closure. Confirmation. What I found was devastation. Message after message. Photos I wish I could unsee. Plans they'd made together. Hotel stays timed perfectly with my deployments. Lies rehearsed down to the smallest detail. 7 months, at least. I felt sick. I took photos of everything. Every message, every image, every timestamp. I needed proof, not just for legal reasons, but to protect myself from the part of me that might later try to forget, to minimize, to forgive too easily. When I was done, I put the tablet back exactly where I found it. I left the house without taking anything. That night, my husband called again. I answered. His voice broke the second he heard mine. Apologies spilled out. How sorry he was, how it meant nothing, how it was a mistake. I listened silently. When he paused, waiting for me to speak, I asked one question. How long? The silence told me everything before he answered. When he finally said it, my chest tightened, but I didn't cry. I told him I knew more than he thought, that I needed time, that we would talk, but not yet. Then I hung up. The next morning, I called in sick. Not because I couldn't physically go to work, but because I couldn't risk breaking down in front of people who still believed my life was intact. I spent that day researching lawyers, divorce law, property division, military implications. It felt surreal, like planning someone else's exit strategy. But underneath the numbness, something solid was forming. Resolve. I wasn't going to scream and beg. I wasn't going to fight for someone who'd already walked away. I didn't know yet whether my marriage could survive. But I knew this: whatever happened next would be on my terms. And for the first time since I walked into that bedroom, I felt like I was taking my power back. I didn't confront him right away. That was intentional. I moved through the next few days like someone walking on cracked ice, careful, quiet, watching for weaknesses. I answered his messages with neutral responses, short, polite, non-committal. I need time. I'm safe. We'll talk soon. He clung to those words like proof I hadn't already left. Behind the scenes, I was preparing. The lawyer I chose was direct, unflinching. She confirmed what I already suspected. The evidence mattered. Not for fault. Our state didn't care about infidelity in the way people assume, but for leverage, for clarity, for protection. My inheritance from my parents was safe, separate, untouchable. The apartment wasn't. That would have to be addressed. I kept my routine as normal as possible. Went to work, answered emails, smiled when required. I told people I was tired, that the deployment had taken more out of me than usual. No one questioned it. Meanwhile, I learned more than I ever wanted to know. From the messages, I discovered they had planned an entire future. Weekends away, excuses prepared in advance, lies layered on top of lies. They talked about how easy it was, how lucky they were that I trusted them. That word, lucky, made my stomach twist. I arranged to meet my friend's wife. Neutral ground. A cafe halfway between our homes. She looked tired when she arrived. Not suspicious, just worn down in that quiet way people get when something is already wrong, but unnamed. I showed her the messages. She didn't cry at first. She went very still. Her hands shook as she scrolled, her face drained of color. When she finally looked up at me, her voice was steady, but hollow. "How long?" I told her. She nodded slowly, like she'd been bracing for this answer without realizing it. She told me he'd been distant for months. Defensive, always on his phone. She'd assumed stress, work pressure, maybe a midlife crisis. She never imagined this. We sat there for a long time, two women bound together by betrayal neither of us asked for. We agreed on one thing immediately: we would not protect them. While our husbands were together that weekend, lying effortlessly, playing their roles, we were planning exits. When my husband came home the following Sunday, he acted like everything was normal. He hugged me too tightly, kissed my cheek like it was proof of something, asked how my week had been. I watched him carefully. I asked him if he loved me. "Yes," he said without hesitation. I asked if he was happy. "Yes." I asked if I had been a good wife. "Yes," again. Then I asked, calmly, "Why are you cheating on me?" The color drained from his face. He denied it at first, tried to minimize, claimed it was one kiss months ago, a mistake at a bar, alcohol, regret. I almost laughed at the audacity. I told him I knew everything. I handed him my lawyer's card and told him all communication would go through her from now on. That's when he broke, crying, begging, promising therapy, promising transparency, promising anything he thought I wanted to hear. I went to pack a bag. He followed me into the bedroom, his tone shifting from desperate to angry when he realized he was losing control. "You're overreacting," he said. "You're throwing away our marriage over one mistake." Then he crossed a line he could never uncross. He reminded me that after my parents died, I'd told him he was my only family. "How can you abandon me," he asked, "when I'm all you have left?" The cruelty of that landed deeper than any affair ever could. I looked at him, really looked at him, and understood something final. This wasn't just betrayal. This was manipulation. I left that night. The fallout was immediate. Messages poured in. From him, from mutual friends, from his family. Some supportive, some confused. Some urging forgiveness without understanding what they were asking me to forgive. His mother called, left a voicemail about commitment, about vows, about not giving up when things get hard. I deleted it. Meanwhile, the truth spread faster than they expected. His friend's wife kicked him out. Mutual friends began choosing sides. And slowly, quietly, the image they'd carefully maintained began to fracture. I didn't gloat. I didn't retaliate. I just kept walking forward while everything behind me burned on its own. After the noise died down, after the messages slowed, and the logistics took over, I hit a wall I didn't see coming. I stayed with my sister for a few days. Her apartment was quiet in a way that felt both safe and suffocating. She didn't push me to talk. She made tea, handed me blankets, let me exist without expectations. At night, though, everything caught up. The images came uninvited. The bedroom, the messages, the lies stacked neatly like evidence in a case I never wanted to prosecute. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my body exhausted, but my mind relentless. I started questioning everything. Not just the affair, the marriage. Was any of it real, or had I just been convenient, a placeholder while I was gone? The worst moments came when the anger faded. Anger had given me energy, focus, direction. Without it, there was just sadness. I cried in the shower so my sister wouldn't hear me. I cried over things that felt stupid. Songs we used to like, a coffee mug he bought me, a sweater that still smelled like our house. I mourned a future that no longer existed. The kids we talked about, the names we picked, the version of myself I thought I was becoming. One afternoon, I sat alone by the window and realized something that scared me more than betrayal. I missed him. Not the man who cheated, the man I thought he was. And that made me feel weak, ashamed. I wondered if staying would be easier, if forgiveness would hurt less than starting over, if love meant enduring this kind of damage. That's when doubt crept in. People told me marriage was work, that everyone makes mistakes, that distance changes people. I replayed his apologies in my head, searching for sincerity. I imagined counseling sessions, careful rebuilding, a fragile peace. But then I remembered the messages, the jokes they shared, the way he lied without hesitation, the way he used my grief, my parents' deaths, as a weapon when he was cornered. And something inside me broke completely. That night, I took out my phone and reread the evidence one last time. Not to torture myself, to anchor myself. I needed to remember why I left. Because grief can romanticize the past. It can soften the sharp edges until betrayal starts looking survivable. I couldn't let that happen. The lowest point came unexpectedly. It was a Sunday, too quiet, too empty. I realized I hadn't eaten all day. I stood in my sister's kitchen, staring at the fridge, unable to decide what mattered enough to choose. That's when it hit me. For years, I had been the stable one, the strong one, the one who held things together. Now I felt hollow. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried until my chest hurt, until my eyes burned, until my body shook with the kind of sobs that come from a place deeper than pain. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want justice. I just wanted my life back. And I knew I couldn't have it. Not the way it was. That was the moment I understood something essential. No matter how much I loved him, staying would mean betraying myself. And that was something I refused to do, no matter how lonely the alternative felt. The turning point didn't come with a dramatic confrontation. It came quietly, on an ordinary morning, with a cup of coffee I didn't finish. I was sitting at my sister's kitchen table, scrolling absent-mindedly through my phone when a message came in from someone I didn't expect. A mutual friend. Someone neutral. Someone who'd stayed silent since everything exploded. She asked if we could talk. We met later that afternoon. She looked uncomfortable, twisting her cup between her hands before finally meeting my eyes. "There's something you should know," she said carefully. My stomach tightened. She told me she'd seen them before, months ago. Late-night conversations, lingering touches, private jokes that didn't include anyone else. She hadn't said anything because she wasn't sure, because she didn't want to cause problems, because she assumed I knew. That sentence landed harder than she realized. She assumed I knew. The truth clicked into place then, fully and irrevocably. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This wasn't something that happened to him. It was a series of choices, made calmly, repeatedly. I thanked her for telling me. On the walk back to my sister's apartment, something shifted inside me. The heaviness was still there, but it had shape now, purpose. That evening, my husband texted again. He said he missed me, said he was lost without me, said he was willing to do anything to fix this. For the first time, I didn't feel tempted. I saw the pattern clearly, the panic now that consequences were real, the sudden willingness to change when control had slipped. I realized that even if he became the version of himself he was promising, I would always remember the version who lied so easily. And that knowledge would poison everything. I sat down and wrote out what I needed. Not demands, truths. I needed honesty without fear. I needed partnership, not convenience. I needed to feel chosen, even when it was hard. As I read the list back to myself, I understood something quietly devastating. He had already proven he couldn't give me those things. Not because he was incapable, but because he didn't value them enough when it mattered. That night, I called my lawyer and told her to proceed. No pauses, no delays, no negotiations. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. The next day, I packed the rest of my things while he was at work. I moved carefully through the apartment, touching walls that no longer felt like home. I didn't cry. By the time he found out, the decision had already settled too deeply to be undone. I didn't block him, but I stopped responding. Silence became my boundary. For the first time since walking into that bedroom, I felt aligned with myself. Not healed, not whole, but honest. And that was enough to keep moving forward. The aftermath unfolded without drama, just consequences stacking quietly, one after another. Once the divorce filing was official, the narrative shifted. The version of events my husband and my former friend had relied on, half-truths, selective apologies, careful omissions, collapsed under its own weight. People started asking questions. Not the loud, confrontational kind, the quieter ones, the kind that come when stories don't line up. Why had they been so close while I was gone? Why had messages been deleted? Why did timelines keep changing? My former friend's wife didn't protect him. She told the truth, to family, to mutual friends, to anyone who asked. She didn't embellish. She didn't need to. Facts were enough. He lost more than his marriage. Friends stopped inviting him places. People who'd once laughed easily around him grew distant, uncomfortable. Trust doesn't break loudly, it erodes, and suddenly there's nothing solid left to stand on. My husband tried to manage the damage. He reached out to friends individually, offering explanations, framing himself as flawed but remorseful. Some listened, some didn't. What surprised him most was his own family. They didn't take sides the way he expected. Once they understood the full picture, the length of the affair, the lies, the manipulation, they pulled back, not angrily, just firmly. Support without enabling. Disappointment without theatrics. That silence hurt him more than confrontation ever could. I watched all of this from a distance, not with satisfaction. With a strange sense of inevitability, I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't impressive, it wasn't permanent, but it was mine. The first night there, I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. The place echoed. Every sound felt amplified. And yet I slept. Really slept. The logistics were exhausting. Paperwork, asset division, meetings with lawyers that drained me in ways physical training never had. But I didn't waver. When my husband asked to pause the proceedings, said we were moving too fast, said we owed it to each other to try again, I didn't respond. The timing wasn't lost on me. He asked after learning that my inheritance was protected, after realizing reconciliation wouldn't come with financial safety. That knowledge didn't harden me. It clarified everything. Friends reacted in different ways. Some surprised me, standing firmly by me without hesitation. Others disappointed me, choosing neutrality over accountability. I learned who valued comfort over integrity. I learned who believed betrayal was just a mistake when it didn't happen to them. I didn't argue. I adjusted. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into routine. Early mornings, structured days, predictable goals. My body responded before my heart did. Strength returned before joy. I started therapy, not to fix myself, but to understand how I'd lost my footing in a story that wasn't mine to carry. Some nights were harder than others. I'd wake up reaching for someone who wasn't there. I'd hear his voice in my head when making small decisions. What to cook, what to watch. Those habits took time to dissolve. But they did dissolve. Slowly, my life stopped orbiting around what I'd lost and started expanding around what I was building. I didn't badmouth him. I didn't defend him either. I told the truth when asked. And then I let it go, because the most powerful thing I did wasn't walking away. It was refusing to carry the burden of his choices any longer. A year later, my life looks quieter. Not empty. Intentional. I wake up early and run along the river near my apartment. Some mornings, the air is so still, it feels like the world is holding its breath with me. Other mornings, I'm exhausted and slow, but I go anyway, because showing up for myself has become a habit. I don't think about him every day anymore. When I do, it's without the sharp edge of pain. More like a scar I notice in certain light, evidence of something that healed imperfectly, but honestly. I learned that love doesn't disappear because someone betrays you. It disappears because trust does. And trust doesn't come back just because someone regrets getting caught. It comes back when someone chooses you consistently, even when it's inconvenient. Especially then. I didn't lose my marriage because I walked away. I lost it because it stopped being mutual long before I knew. What I gained was harder to see at first. Self-respect, clarity, the ability to stand in discomfort without collapsing into compromise. I learned that loyalty without boundaries is self-erasure, that forgiveness is optional, not an obligation, that choosing peace over familiarity is one of the bravest decisions a person can make. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever forgive him. I tell them forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. I've let go of anger, but I won't return to a life where I had to compete for honesty. If there's one lesson I'd offer anyone listening, it's this. Pay attention to what someone does when they think you'll never find out. That's who they really are. And when the truth finally shows itself, no matter how painful, believe it. Because starting over isn't the end of your story. It's the moment you reclaim authorship. And that, I've learned, is worth everything.